So, hello out there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. If you're joining us live, I hope you're having a great day. And if you're joining us on the replay, we appreciate that as well. So, I'm Annette Richmond. This is the Smarter Career Moves LinkedIn live show. And I am so excited to have Dawid here with me today. I actually met you a couple of months ago at the NRWA conference, and we had a great, chat at lunch or something around a table. And I thought you would be such a great guest for our show. And so, why don't we start by having you please introduce yourself, tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Annette, thanks so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Dawid Wiacek. It's a nice Polish name. I was born in Poland and then I became a Brooklyn transplant. And I like to kind of bill myself as a recovering HR professional from the talent learning and development space. And then in 2015, I left that wonderful world and I became a career and executive coach. I call myself the no nonsense executive coach and career coach because where I really thrive is kind of wading through other people's excuses and fears and nonsense and helping them achieve what it is that they want to achieve. So they come to me with their stated goals and I help them craft the roadmap to get there. So that's why I really focus on the no nonsense. We have a lot of fun, no doubt. I'm a creative human being. But at the end of the day, a lot of people come to me with a lot of real life problems, whether they're looking to get a promotion internally or they're looking to shed and leave a toxic job, shed all of that behind. So these are very very serious matters. But at the end of the day, I try to make some light and levity out of a very serious situation, so that way that the whole job search process is not as painful, but it's a little bit more light and a little bit more fun and engaging for the client. So that's a little bit about what I do.
Well, thank you so much. And I know that because I'm seeing applause already. If you're out there in the audience, please say hello and let us know where you're joining from. Put your comments and questions in the chat. We will be able to see them here in the studio. And, I'm sure, get David to answer some questions for you. So let's get right down to it. And as I mentioned to you before we went live, I love the idea that you focus on the career story, and I do as well with the people that I work with. And so many people, those who DIY, do their own resumes, they think of their resume as their employment history, which is so not what it is. So can you talk a little bit about why this whole idea of the career story is so important?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're all called to be brand strategists and marketers of our own story. At the end of the day, the resume is an important component of that. It is a piece of that. But at the end of the day, a resume is a very, you could rewrite your resume yourself, no doubt, but a resume is just a piece of the story. It has to be consistent with the LinkedIn. It has to be consistent with your social media presence. And more importantly, it has to be consistent with how you speak about yourself in networking situations, formally, informally, in informational interviews, in formal job interviews. So the whole narrative has to be consistent across all of those touch points or milestones. If you have a decent resume or even a good resume, but you can't match that level of energy and compelling information during an in-person or a Zoom call, then then people are going to start doubting whether that story is even true. Did you make it up? Did you have someone ghostwrite it for you, but it's not really true? So people are going to start to be skeptical and doubt you instead of being excited about all of the amazing things that you bring to the table. So the consistency of narrative is something that I work on with my clients, and I'm sure you do too, is making sure that wherever they come in, whether they come in for help with their interview or help with their LinkedIn or their cover letter or their resume, that the story is consistent across all of those points.
Yes, I very much agree with you. And I think of it, the process, as personal branding, helping people develop their personal brand. And, as we both know, everything you do, everything you say in person, online, it all influences what people think about you. And so it is important to have that consistency. So can you talk then a little bit about how the sort of the resume and the LinkedIn profile to start with need to tie in together to have that consistency?
So here's the sort of the brutal truth. I've had clients who come to me for a resume review or just a touch up or an overhaul. And and what they do is then they take that information and copy paste it into the LinkedIn. Now, is that a cardinal sin? If you ask, a bunch of resume writers, some may say yes, some may say no. At the end of the day, if the information that is on the resume is compelling, is interesting, and it's simply sort of transplanted into the LinkedIn, that's not the worst thing in the world, right?
Mhm.
That's still
Mhm.
better than having a skeletal or non-existent LinkedIn. However, I think LinkedIn is a little bit more of a dynamic platform where you can show a little bit more personality. You can upload a video. If that's too much for you, I understand. Maybe you can upload an article that speaks about you, an article that you've written, an article that speaks about a project or a division or a department that you worked on. So the article that you post doesn't necessarily have to have your name in it, but as long as you're somehow affiliated with that. So in other words, uploading some kind of dynamic content, whether it's a PowerPoint, a slide, a video, an article, an image, any kind of media to the LinkedIn starts to bring your generally flatter resume to life. So I think of the LinkedIn as an extension, as a kind of as a nice complement to your to your resume. It shouldn't really be the same, but at the very least, if you're choosing between having no LinkedIn and having something, then to start with, at least you can copy some of the maybe the summary section and some of the main wins from your resume just to get started.
Oh, I agree with you completely. I agree with you completely, and I love that. I use that term skeleton resume as skeleton LinkedIn profile as well. And
Happy
people have,
early
they have
Halloween,
like
right?
they have the job type. Yeah, I know how they have the job title and the company name, and they feel that that's enough. It's kind of like goes back to the whole professional experience, just being the employment history. And for people who are listening, what you're referring to is like the featured section, right? Where you can put in things that also attach to different
Absolutely.
positions where you can upload that media. And of course, I agree with you. I think the featured section is one of the most underused sections on people's profiles, and it's not automatically there. So if you don't
Yeah.
have it, I was just working with a friend, if you don't have it, you need to add it, but that's like a whole other thing. But with the LinkedIn profile, two things stand out for me. And one of them is the about section. Now, I work with clients and I encourage them to tell part of their career story. For example, I've worked with people in medical publishing, but they're really sort of driven to do that because dad was a dentist, and so they
Yeah.
wanted to be in that health field somehow. And but they didn't want to be a direct service provider. And I think things like that show. People always talk about, "Oh, I'm passionate," but I think it's things like that show the passion. So, kind of what's your take on that?
I love that. So one other thing, and I'll get right to that amazing question.
Uh-huh.
Not only the featured section, but each individual job
Yes.
history, you can add media. Let's say 3 jobs ago there was an article or something that you did, a project that you want to tout and highlight. So you can include that in the individual job histories as well as the featured media section. So
Yes.
there are different touch points throughout the LinkedIn profile where you can embed that media. So getting back to your question about the bio or the about section on LinkedIn. Origin stories are, I mean, we're still primal. Like we love sitting around a fire and talking about, our lives and our stories. So origin stories, how you got into the work that you're currently doing, even if it wasn't a direct, climb up, maybe you kind of took some time off or you took, made 17 pivots. People love to know. So the example that I give is, maybe for some, maybe you're a photographer for the New York Times today, but you were 5 years old and you dug up an old camera in your, grandpa's attic or your grandma's attic, and you fell in love and you haven't put down your camera ever since. So people really resonate with that. If you front load that kind of information in your bio, people are more likely to remember the rest of it, or at least read the rest of it, as opposed to just starting with, results oriented and dynamic professional, blah, 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 which is, bare minimum. And in fact, I think it's just so tired and so commonplace that people just gloss over it.
Oh, I agree with you. And you know what? What you were too polite to say, it's boring,
Oh yeah.
right? It's boring. Like nobody wants to go to my LinkedIn profile and read Annette Richmond, is a blah, blah, blah. And she went to school. Nobody wants to read that. And
No,
it's
they
just like,
don't.
oh Lord.
In
So, but
fact, I should say people listening to this should absolutely go on your LinkedIn profile and check out how awesome it is to get a sense of that. I invite them to take a look at mine as well. So, just get a sense of like real life. This is how people have fun with it. This is how people take creative license. Still professional, still grammatically correct, but there's a little bit of levity and fun infused.
yeah, I think so too. And I just want to ask you quickly about the background image. Do you work with your
Ooh.
clients on that? Because you go to profiles, and I occasionally I've gone to a LinkedIn trainer profile and see like the generic background, and I'm just floored. But what's your advice on something like on that? Because I think it's so important.
Absolutely. So again, we're visual creatures, right? So I would say that for me, I mean, let's look at our backgrounds, right? Your background, my background here. These are not fake. These are real, pieces of art. They give a sense of personality, and they're memorable, right? Versus just like having a green screen or something fake. So I really think that it's important to front load and make crystal clear the impression that you want to make. So for those of you who are not familiar, on LinkedIn, right at the very top of your profile, you have you have your image, your headshot, and then behind there is this sort of rectangular, horizontal banner image or background image, and it defaults to sort of this grayish, bluish, blah, rectangle. So what I tell my clients is, I don't, I'm not a graphic designer per se, but I have a creative, a bone in my body. So I say, think about not so much the past, but think about the job that you're going for. Think about the value that you're going to be giving to the job that you're going for. Think about the industry. So let's say I'm working with a chief marketing officer, right? I tend to work a lot with, VPs and C-suite talent. Sometimes they're a little bit risk averse, but the functions or the companies that they work for are really dynamic, innovative, cutting edge, really cool, edgy. And I'm like, but your background image is gray, so like there's clearly a disconnect between the awesomeness that you do every single day and how you brand yourself, right? You brand the company, you brand the services and the products in a great way, but you fall short on yourself. So I'll give them, samples. I'll maybe kind of refer them to websites like unsplash.com. But there are a lot of amazing websites out there that offer affordable or low cost, sometimes free images to use. And so, for example, if you're in a really creative environment, if you're a chief marketing officer, make sure that that image is vibrant and colorful and brings your profile to life. If you're somebody who's a keynote speaker, for example, maybe that's a picture of you speaking in front of a large audience. If you're a lawyer, working for or wanting to work at an environmental or eco-friendly company, maybe put a picture of a forest or a tree, something that speaks to that green aspect. So think creatively, think outside of the quote unquote the box to put an image within the box that speaks to what you want to do.
No, I agree with you. And I always caution people not to grab something off of the internet, because you want to make sure that you have the rights for it. And there are places where
Yeah.
you can get, something for free, or you can purchase something that's relatively inexpensive. So it's
Yeah.
not, it's not something that's going to break the bank. And I
Yeah.
also suggest people can go to Canva, which has a free, or paid membership
Sure.
option. And there's a lot you can do with the free version that to make yourself stand out. And even if it's something as simple as your name, with some colors or something
Yeah.
that may, be the same as your resume to kind of tie that together, it's
Yeah.
better than that generic.
Absolutely. And Canva is a great option because it's, if you think you're not creative, the truth is we're all creative at various degrees, at various points in our lives. But tools like Canva and even within PowerPoint, if you, put in some words, they, have this option of like of the design where they
Yes.
give you suggestions. You can kind of use that and take a screenshot of that. So there are a lot of options that are affordable, low cost, or free. And if you are doubting yourself, right, because you're convinced that you don't have a creative bone in your body, then create a couple of options and shop it around, essentially share it with a couple of your, not your nicest friends, but some of your most ruthless friends, your most honest friends, and say, of these three, which one puts me in the best light? Given, you know what I want to be doing, you know the kinds of jobs that I'm applying for. So kind of test it in the marketplace. Ask your friends to give you honest feedback and choose the best one.
And all of this, together is part of your brand that you're talking about. And so I'd like to turn, because I know you do also interview coaching. And when I was a recruiter, I one of the biggest mistakes that I saw was if I was calling someone. I was a third party recruiter, so I would find candidates. I was on LinkedIn sourcing them like all day, every day. And when I spoke with them, it was more of a screening, the screening interview. And I would always ask them, what do you know about the company, or, what makes you interested in the company? And they would often say, well, nothing, or I don't know, or something like that. And, and so I am a big, proponent of doing research ahead of time, but I'd like you to talk about that and what you think are mistakes that people are making in interviews, and they don't, they don't realize it.
That's a great thing. Well, so let me start with talking a little bit about that research or lack thereof, and then talk about some other things that people can do or avoid to make a good first impression during those screeners. So research is important, and research doesn't have to, be agonizing. It doesn't have to take you, 20 hours per job application. At the very least, go to the website of the company and at least read what they're putting forth, right? It's going to be perfect. It's going to be rosy. They're going to be putting their best foot forward, obviously, on, their press page or their announcements page. So go on the website. Also go on the company's social. Also, Instagram, probably TikTok. Most companies have that. LinkedIn for sure. And look at current employees or recently, people who maybe recently left, and see what kinds of things they're talking about around the company. So it could be events, it could be product announcements, it could be just trends, any kind of information that you can get that you resonate with, right? Chances are, if you're applying for this company, there's something about that industry or that specific company that does resonate with you.
Mhm.
If not, then maybe you're applying for the wrong company, right? So try to find something that appeals to you. In fact, maybe do the research before you even apply. In other words, don't just blindly apply to companies because you're desperate. Look for companies that actually resonate with you on a personal level, right? Maybe there's some core value. Maybe, again, I'm just giving the eco-friendly sort of value because that's important to me. If there's a company that really talks about sustainability and that's important to you, then you're going to have an easier time connecting with the recruiter or eventually the hiring manager, because those core values are authentic to you. You don't have to scramble and make things up during the recruiter screening. So find time to do the research. I can almost guarantee you, right? Not 100%, but I can almost guarantee you that if you find that do that research, you'll either find things that convince you to apply, or you'll find reasons that you don't want to apply, right? If people are constantly complaining about it, or you're just getting a vibe, an instinct that something's off, then maybe that's a clue. I shouldn't be applying to this company. I better use my resources, my time, my energy in a different direction.
No, I love that. And you're so right to go there and investigate, because diversity is a big buzzword, talking point. And for some companies, they talk about diversity, and then you look at their leadership and it's all white men.
Right.
So, you want to, it's a good way to see, is there really some, meat on those bones? Are they
Oh
walking the
yeah.
walking, not just talking the talk? So I have to ask you though, the two worst jobs I ever had in my life were when my gut said, you know what, it's not for you. But one, I wanted to get into advertising. And so I took a job, but I lasted very short time. Another one was it's something I wanted to move in a certain industry. And, I was miserable in both of them.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on that idea of, trust your gut, or not?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you have no other information, right? If you've done, well, listen, I'm assuming you've done research and you do have some qualitative or quantitative data, but let's assume you have no other information and the only information you have is your gut telling you avoid it at all costs, then, maybe avoid it at all costs. However, I'm a coach. And so as a coach, my job is to open people's eyes up to possibilities, open up people's or expand people's comfort zones,
Mhm.
challenge people, right? So if you're miserable, if you've been miserable until this point because you've been taking the same safe job, or maybe you've actually been overworking and overextending yourself consistently, and now your health is suffering, whatever your journey is, this is a moment to take stock of the past and say, okay, what have I been avoiding? What have I been doing that's been to my own detriment, despite, I might have been kicking butt for the company and killing the numbers, but maybe I'm actually slowly killing myself. So I think it's really important to be honest with yourself, and working with a coach, whether it's, and a coach doesn't have to be someone you pay for. Like, I'm a coach and people pay me good money. A coach could be, you might find a mentor that has those coach like qualities. You might find a manager who, it gets complicated with conflict of interest, but there are managers out there. I've had some who were actually also really good coaches. And so, find someone in your life who can kind of help you navigate a third party perspective on where you are and what kind of the patterns and the negative thoughts and the negative behaviors that you've engaged in until this point. Now, if you want to pivot, right? Because a lot of times the gut is about, like, do I want to pivot outside of my industry? Do I want to pivot outside of my region? I want to relocate. Do I want to change the format? Maybe I've been working, in an office and now I want to go remote, or vice versa. I say, what is the harm in trying, right? The harm in trying is usually, we can't predict the future, but usually the harm in trying is, okay, it didn't quite work out for me, but you have learned what doesn't work for you. And that's a lesson in life that you can't always avoid. So sometimes I encourage my clients to kind of embrace it. And then finally, the thing I'll say is, sometimes it's the instance of the job. So let's say you're pivoting out of sales into, you want to be in finance, right? Like you're a sales professional, now you want to be an accountant. Maybe you start working at a new company, and you have a horrible time as an accountant. But it's not because of the accounting. It's because the boss is toxic, or the boss harasses you, or it's just evil. And so you would have actually been a really good accountant anywhere else in a company that's decent, if not amazing. So it's hard to tease that out for yourself. If you're in it and you're having a horrible time, you think, oh gosh, this move into accounting was the worst move possible. When in reality, you could have had a really decent, second career as an accountant, but you just didn't have the right environment to cultivate that.
Well, that's true. I so agree with you on that. But since you mentioned the whole idea of stepping out of your comfort zone, because that is something where people are, people like us think they know they should be doing video, but they don't want to be on camera, or people in corporate feel like, they should be reaching out to people, but they're afraid of getting the no answer. And so can you just give a little bit of advice on, how people can maybe take baby steps out of their comfort zone?
I love that. Yeah. So when it comes to, so for some people, when I work with people, they've been in a certain company or a certain job. They've always gotten their jobs through networking, and now they have to apply formally online. And it's been a decade or 20 years. And even though they're VPs and they're highly intelligent and confident in a lot of other areas of their lives, they're a little bit rusty and dusty when it comes to their confidence. So we talk about, what's the worst that could happen. We kind of almost imagine and say, okay, well, what are the scenarios that can actually happen? And you kind of walk through them. You kind of say, okay, well, if X happens, if you do get rejected, or if you don't hear back from a recruiter, what can you do to A, deal with that sort of emotionally, mentally, but also B, increase the chances that you do hear back. So there are practical steps you can do: following up, informational interviews, putting yourself out there on LinkedIn, sending a handwritten note. There are a million things that you can do if you really love that job. If that job or company isn't perfect for you, isn't ideal, don't waste your effort. You can now reallocate your precious time and energy to another job or company that is sort of a more of a good fit for you. Another thing is in mock interviews, right? Some people are really afraid of having that Zoom interview, right? Because they feel like they clam up, and they just get really, really fearful of that whole process. As an interview coach, we have mock interview sessions through Zoom, and people go through that sort of mock, and sometimes they're a little bit awkward at first, but by 10 or 15 minutes into it, they're giving me stories. Obviously I'm asking them really good questions, and not every recruiter is going to be, maybe as adept at that. But I show them that, hey, you have amazing anecdotes from your life. You have real life examples from every job you've held as to what you bring to the table. And people are like, oh, you know what? I had forgotten about that, because I don't spend all day tooting my own horn. So just going through the process of answering these questions in a safe environment, like a mock interview, can give people a little bit more pep in their step.
No, I agree with you. And I will say, I think that that is one of the biggest benefits of working with someone like you or someone like me is we force people to go back and look at their career and look at things. And so they are ready with those stories. And it helps them, I think, to realize, how awesome they are because, and that self-reflection is something people often, I think, just they don't do it on their own. But if they're working with someone like you or me, we make them. And so,
Yeah,
right?
well, they're paying us good money. A,
Yeah.
we also create a fun, safe space, psychologically safe space to do it. We're not like judging them, we're
Right.
critiquing them, but they're paying us. They're excited, they want it, they crave it. So a lot of times when people come to us, they're already ready. Like they've already done the kind of mental gymnastics in their head and say, you know what? I have enough of my excuses. I'm done with, being sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm ready to work with somebody. So they're already primed to work with us.
So so we're actually getting close to the end of our time here. And I do want to ask you, because we have talked about a lot of different things, but obviously I am, I don't remember to ask everything. And so we want to say hello to our friend Sarah out there who's been here. And she said, yes, a safe space is so important. So thank you, Sarah.
That
We
was
appreciate
amazing.
you being here. Um, but is there something that you would like to add or share that we haven't talked about that you think is important?
Yeah, I think first of all, Sarah, thank you. And Annette, thank you so much for having me. I find that the most successful engagements with clients, and this isn't just from my own experience, it is, but I've seen this with my peer coaches in the industry is coaches who can operate really well in both the emotional and the practical space, right? So I work with people across the board. They tend to be more mid and senior level professionals, no doubt, executive level, but they're also human beings with fears and stresses and concerns. So sometimes it's really important to kind of address, and I have this here, like this picture of the heart, right? Like address the emotionality of it and create that safe space to explore. But then don't just live in that emotional, like, oh, feel good space. Now I have my confidence. Okay, now I have my confidence. I've built that up with you as a coach. What are the practical steps I need to do today between our next meeting at this time next week, right? If we're meeting weekly, to make sure that I'm getting traction on the networking front, on the interview front. If I'm making updates to my LinkedIn or my resume, is that being done on time? So this is the practical side, right? And as a coach, I like to live in the emotional side for a little bit, but then we get into the logistical, the practical brass tacks to make sure that clients are seeing results. Otherwise, they're just happy and excited and confident, but there's nothing to show for it.
Oh, I so agree with you. I mean, there, obviously there has to be a mix there. So I thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you. How can people find you and are you open to connecting with people on LinkedIn?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm the career fixer. You can also search me by my name, but that's going to be harder to spell, Dawid Wiacek. But find me on the career fixer, and that's LinkedIn is my playground basically. I live there. I no longer have Instagram. I no longer have Facebook. LinkedIn is really where I go to play. So happy to say hello.
Oh, me too. Me too. Definitely. So, thanks again. And thank you to everyone who's been here in the audience. I've been seeing some applause. And so I know people are out there listening and watching, even if they may not be giving us some comments. So thanks everyone and have a great rest of your day.